Many beginners make these mistakes and which can actually make a big difference in their watercolor painting results. In this video, I'm going to share top 5 mistakes that beginners make which can drastically improve their painting. Let's jump into the video. First mistake is not activating the colors properly. So the very first mistake is whenever a beginner is trying to paint, just right now, they take their brush, put it in, dip it in water, and just grab the paint and try to smudge it and then start painting with it. The result is they will get very less pigmentation from the paint, like you can see. But if we allow the paint, if I use my spraying bottle and I just spray all the colors that I want to use, let's try the colors now. They are sitting with water for about 15 seconds now. Let's try and see the paint. And as you can see, they are much darker and they give a lot more pigmentation than the first one. Let's try another shade. So now they are fully activated. Let's see this paint. You can see the difference, how pigmented these colors are right now compared to this one. The second mistake that the beginners make is not using enough water. So if your paints are too dry, they are going to be very patchy on the paper and you have to drag your brush a lot of times to get a space covered. I'll show you how. So let's, for example, take this red color. I'm going to make a puddle of red color, enough color so that I can cover a space here. And beginners are very afraid to load their brush with the paint, and they are afraid to go back and dip it into the paint again. So let me show you what mistakes they are making. So if I need to cover, maybe I'm going to paint a square. And the beginners are afraid and they use very less of water, and they do not wet their brush a lot many times, and this will give them a patchy painting like this one. But if they are using enough of water, like I'm dropping some more water in my paint, making it watery enough, and I load my brush with the paint, and then I paint the same kind of square, but I'm constantly dipping my brush in water to get a smooth finish of this paint. This will give me a very gradient kind of a background, and it will be less patchy and it will be less dry on my brush as well. So it's going to be very gradient, as you can see the difference in both of these. This one is using very little water, not enough to cover a space, and this one is just enough to cover a space so that it's very gradient and very smooth finish. So make sure you use enough water in your paint so that you get a gradient effect. Let's move on to the mistake number 3, which is using a lot of water. So just now we have seen that we have to use more water, but not too enough to create puddles. I'm going to paint a flower in front of you, and I'm using a generous amount of water so that it creates puddles. So every time I dip my brush in the water, I'm directly coming to the painting and just dropping the whole amount of water on my brush, on my paper, and on my flower. So it is going to create a lot of puddles here. So here you can see there are a lot of puddles here, accumulating more color on this side, and the sides which are very dry, they are going to get patchy a lot. So there is a way in which we can correct this mistake. Is when you dip your brush in water, make sure you dab a little bit on the paper towel so that you have less water on your brush, and then you start painting with the same technique that you would do on this one. So I'm dipping my brush in water, just dabbing a little on the paper towel, and I have a very controlled way to paint on this. As you can see, I can be more careful on how much I'm dropping, and if I see too much of puddle accumulating here, I will just dab it on my paper towel and just pick the extra water from there so that I have a very smooth painting. And you can instantly see the difference. This one looks more clean, more even, whereas in this one you can still see the water is holding on this corner and somewhere here and here, so it gives a very patchy look. I always recommend using little water. Just take your brush, and if you're dipping your brush in water, just dab it a little bit on your paper towel and then go over your painting. This will have less of water on your brush, and if you need more water you can always go back and dip your brush in water as well. So this is one mistake that most of the beginners make. They collect too much of water on the paper and the paper starts crumbling in, and it gets patchy when it's dried out. I will show you once it is dried out. This is how these flowers look after drying. As you can see, this one which had a lot of puddles, it's looking very patchy. You can see multiple lines and textures in this one, which is not ideal for the flower that I was painting. Whereas this one looks more very radiant, smooth petals, no patches anywhere. So make sure that you do not take more of water, and if you do, just try and dab it on your paper towel a little bit using your brush and remove those puddles for a perfect painting and a smooth painting. On to the next mistake, which is mistake number 4, not letting your layers dry completely. For example, I'm painting a scenery in which I have to do a background color. For example, I'm using this blue color on my background and I lay over the color and I use my regular technique to do the background. I'm done with the background, but I do not let it dry completely, and I straight away use my other color that I want to use on top of it. Supposedly I want to paint a beautiful hut in front of this one. So without letting the first layer dry out completely, I straight away jump into my next color and start painting with that. So what it is going to do is, as you can see, it's going to spread a lot on the paper and it's not going to give me definition on what I'm painting afterwards. As you can see, in no way it looks like a house. And no matter how many times I try to go over, I'm not going to get the perfect shape for what I was painting already. So it's very important that you have to let your layer, the first layer, dry out before going in with other details. For example, let me show you how you can correct it. So I'm going to use the same blue shade on this side. I'm going to paint in the same way that I did before, and I will let this layer dry out completely before going in with the other color. Let me dry it out and I will show you the difference. This one is completely dried up now. As you can see, it's completely dried, and I'm going to use the same color that I did for the first one. And I'm going to use the same consistency, enough water on my brush, and then you see I have a precise line for what I'm painting or drawing on that layer. It makes a huge difference. Be patient, let the layers dry if you have to give more details on your painting. So whatever I paint is not merging with the other color, it is actually at the place that I want it to be. And you can clearly see the difference here. This one is where I did not let the previous layer dry out completely, and this one is patiently waiting, letting the layers dry completely and then using the next color on top of it. It makes a huge difference. All you need is a little bit of patience to wait. The fifth and the last mistake that watercolor beginners make is working too much on a particular piece and overthinking a lot on a small piece of painting. Actually, sometimes a few strokes are enough, but overworking on a particular piece creates muddy textures and clutters the paint and doesn't show the actual depth or the strokes that you initially get. Let me paint a rose and show you how. So I start loosely by just making C curves in the center. I load my brush and then again continuing with the C curves. And then dipping my brush in water. This is a very confident way to paint a rose. I'm not overworking, I'm just going through the very few strokes, trying to place them correctly and then just leaving where it is. But if you paint the same rose and trying to overthink and make every oops, so this can really happen. So don't worry, just take your paper towel, dab it on the drop of paint that you just dropped, and see, you barely see it now. So the wrong way to paint anything or just overworking is just going too much over the painted area again and again. So I'm going to load my brush again and just washing my brush, having some water on my brush. So as you can see, both look the similar right now, but the overworking and overthinking to make it even better or perfecting it even more. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over some areas again, and then I'll try to smudge each and everything and just create, just overthinking that the petals might look like this and this, and I'm just going to just cover everything here. This one is a much worked upon. Multiple times I've used the brush again and again in the center, and I see just a blob of color here and just a center of the rose. No definition for the petals. Whereas in this one, I left some negative spaces, some white spaces, used very little strokes to give more definition. And here we can at least see some loose petals of the rose and a very good definition of the flower. So sometimes you have to let go, just be free to paint. And again, be confident and enjoy your painting. I hope this video was helpful for you all, and if it was, then please do not forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel for more such videos. And I will see you guys in my next video. Till then, take care. Bye bye.